Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
To the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Brice. Listen to us right now on the GSMC Podcast Network. We have a very jam-packed show for you today. We're going to talk about David Stern, his impact in the league, what David Stern had to go through to get the league to where it is today, as he's very much responsible for why the league is where they are. Also, we're going to give some news and updates around the league, some all-star voting, some potential trades in the future. Also, I'm going to give y'all some of my slumps from rookies and sophomores in the NBA, and also some bold predictions later on in the show. So, starting off here, we're going to remember the passing of David Stern. David Stern, commissioner for over 2 decades, passed away yesterday in a very tragic. He was very tragic way. He was battling a brain hemorrhage, I believe. He passed away yesterday on New Year's Day. David Stern is a guy who he is a very big part of why the NBA is what it is now. When he took over back in 1984, the NBA was still on tape delay. The finals were on tape delay, and basketball was not very popular. Now, luckily, he came in during the Showtime Lakers and Larry Bird and all that, so he had some things going for him. But they didn't have a TV deal. And he had to convince people why they should take this TV deal, why people and investors should invest into the NBA. And one of the biggest challenges was also because since the NBA is mainly African American, it was a challenge convincing them you can market stars, you can market African American stars and make a lot of money off of it. Because obviously at that time that was still a little suspect if you could do it. Because now if you look at the NBA today, the league is completely marketed off stars. LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Luka Doncic, Giannis, James Harden, Westbrook. You know, they're marketed off all those guys. And he had to basically convince them at that time, hey, you trust us and you invest in the league and you will get a return for your investment. He helped the NBA become big. And then he also had a very great blessing in the Bulls of the 90s, because now it gave more people in the Detroit Bad Boy Pistons. And it really helped him get the league where he wanted it to go. He was a guy who, you know, at that time with the owners that were there, was the perfect time for him to come into the league and become the commissioner. He worked very well with a lot of the older owners. And really, if you also forgot, when he came into the league, there were only 23 teams. Now there are 30. So he also had to deal with the incomingness of teams and have to deal with, you know, working new teams into the league so they could have a chance to prosper in the NBA. He helped NBA become a much more rich league. He helped the NBA become a much more of a great league, you know, and he's continued all of that all the way to his last years. I mean, a lot of people in recent memory remember one of the big decisions he made was veto the Chris Paul trade to the Lakers because of league imbalance. He was a man who spoke out against league imbalance. He did not believe that there should be imbalance in the league. He feels like every team needs to be, obviously you're going to have your great teams, you're going to have your average, they're not so good teams, but there has to be like a balance. And that's why he vetoed the trade. And he also has done a lot of other things, you know, implementing, you know, what's happened in the draft and implementing different, you know, rules and regulations throughout CBA agreements he's been a part of, you know, because he was a guy who, the commissioner in all sports is really for the owners to help do the owners' bidding in terms of help push maybe some agendas that the owners may want to have pushed. But with David Stern, one thing he did, and this is why he preached balance, is he was also in the players' side. He, at the end of the day, wanted what was best for the players. And he had a great job of balancing the owners and making them happy, but balancing the players. An example, when AI became the MVP of the league, he had cornrows, he dressed a certain way. He implemented a dress code. But does anybody really follow that dress code? No. But he only did it for advertisers, because advertisers were happy with the fact that, hey, he implemented something. He's not just letting the league be ran rampant by the players. Because in a way, it's almost like with advertisers, sometimes they want to know that if we're going to put money into your league, you're going to control things that need to be controlled to help us, produce and put more into your league. And like I said, nobody really follows the dress code now. Obviously, it's a spectacle now. You see what people walk in with, all these different dresses, all these different outfits, fashionistas, and he did that. But the fact that he did not push it is why the players like him. Basically, he was like, listen, I have to do this because of advertisements and what's best for the league. But this isn't because I want to take away your rights. I want to take away what you've done for us. I want to take away the ability for you guys to be players. He just wanted to do what he felt like he had to do to help the entire league become what the league is today. He's had a very big impact on what a lot of people have done. He's had an impact on what the league has become. And, I said earlier it was 2 decades, it's 3 decades he served as commissioner, but he oversaw so many significant changes in events. Obviously, like I said, the 7 new franchises, the 6 relocations of franchises, the NBA television revenue increased 40 times under Stern, and the average player's salary ballooned from $250,000 a year to $5 million per year as well. As you can tell, he's had a very big impact in what he's done. He's done so much for the players. I mean, that's one reason why that when he got the league to be marketed by people, it helped. Because now people could now sit here and give them what they wanted. They could give them anything and know if you can get a deal with the NBA, you're going to get a million eyes, millions and millions of eyes seeing your commercials, seeing your ads. And he was very much a part of it. He made the NBA relevant. He also instituted a player drug testing and salary cap, also because just, obviously since the game, there was more money coming into the game. You needed a way to control the money. You did, because, even though the owners had money, certain owners made more money than other owners. Some owners aren't willing to pay as much as other owners. So the solution was, how about this? With the revenue we get, we split it among 30 teams, and that's your salary cap. And then you sign players. Also, the drug testing was important because obviously this helped, control maybe players that maybe had some drug issues coming in and off of the court. We also can't forget one of his also great accomplishments was when Stern formed the WNBA, which gave a professional league for women. And yes, the WNBA may not be popular in a lot of people's eyes, but just giving women basketball players that chance to still go to a national league, a big league, a league that still is on national television, that is just such a big thing for any girl who wanted to play basketball. Because, it's kind of like a lot of women's sports outside of soccer and a lot of women's sports, the peak of competition, the peak of it for most girls is college, like volleyball, college, back before the WNBA was college, college was the main top point for a woman if they wanted to play a sport. And when he introduced the WNBA, it allowed women that maybe play basketball and love basketball to now have a further career in it, and that's something you have to commend him for, that's something that's amazing, and at least the WNBA owns TV deals with ABC, ESPN, NBA TV, and CBS. So obviously you see that people put money into this league, and it's just been fantastic. And, David Stern was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2014. And, he's just a pioneer for everything that has happened in this league. He dealt with so much that had to happen in this league. The only thing that you may say that he may have struggled with is the new owners, a lot of the Mark Cubans and guys who came in, because obviously owners started switching ownerships and things started to change. And you can sit here and maybe I feel like that Adam Silver is best right now for what the new owners want. and he's better for this. But we can never forget what David Stern has done all the way up to this point in his life, and how he's helped the NBA become what it is today. And thoughts and prayers go out to his family. Very sad time. He was a great man in life, and he was a great man in business in the NBA. And we wish, like I said, thoughts and prayers to his family, and we just wish the best. And he will not be forgotten. Rest in peace, David Stern. But coming up next, we're going to talk about some news and notes around the league. We're going to talk about some, just things that have happened coming up next.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the passing of David Stern, his impact and what he did for the league. Now we're going to talk about some news and notes around the league, starting with Jimmy Butler parts with Jordan. This was interesting to me. It was a mutual agreement. It's interesting why he'd want to part with them. Players make these deals and decisions all the time. Even working with certain companies, they're like, okay, do I want to stay with this company? Do I want to leave this company? Do I want to stay with this company? Do I want to leave this company? And it's always one of those decisions that has to be made. The contract and everything that was scheduled was supposed to be running till September 30th, I think, of this year. But no, Jimmy Butler now is set to negotiate with multiple brands on a new multi-year endorsement, hopefully finding a new deal before All-Star Weekend in February. If we remember, Jimmy Butler started his career with Adidas, but then shorts to the Jordan brand in 2014. And also, if you remember an interview that one of his former agent did back in 2015, he said his client took 75% pay cut to make that change. So it's obvious Jimmy Butler, I guess, is looking for a brand that he feels like fits him and fits what he wants to do. And, Jimmy's been patient, I think Jamie might be doing this to become more of a bigger face, to get more publicity for himself. There are some people who even suggest that maybe he's trying to sign with Dwayne Wade's, their brand, and the Way of Wade brand, which is an offshoot from China Apparel. And I think that's something that he could potentially be doing. I think Jimmy Butler, again, is one of the best up-and-coming players in the NBA in terms of superstars, because nobody really considers him a superstar, but he has all the talent in the world to be a superstar. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. It's funny because you would think he's with the Jordan brand, which is considered the biggest brand in all of sports, and to say that you want to leave it, it's like it just shows you Jimmy Butler is one of those guys. It doesn't matter how big you are. It doesn't matter if you're perceived as the best. If he doesn't like it, if he doesn't feel like the culture for him is what he wants, or he doesn't feel like he's getting what he wants from it, he is not scared to make a change. He is not scared to leave. He is not scared to go somewhere else. And that's something I think that you have to commend Jimmy Butler on. He is definitely, I would consider, one of the realest people in the league. And he'll tell you what the truth is to what the deal is at all times, because he's not scared to allow and tell people what's going on and what's going to happen. So, congrats to Jimmy Butler. Like I said, plenty of people would love to have Jimmy Butler a part of their brand, which is why he also did this. because there's going to be plenty of people who actually want Jimmy Butler to come a part of them and become, in the group of everybody else that, is looking for him. I'm sure Adidas might try to renegotiate Under Armour, New Balance, Skechers. He might do a Kawhi Leonard, go outside the box and do New Balance. Or maybe he might be the face of Skechers, or he might be the face of something else. We really don't know. Or the way of Wade. I mean, you really don't know with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is truly a wild card, and you really never know what he's going to do, because Jimmy Butler is an enigma who can make a decision at any time, anywhere, doing different things. So, I just wish Jimmy the best in wherever he gets, and I'm sure he's going to get paid from this too. He's going to get paid. Next up, James Harden and Giannis Antetokounmpo have been named Western and Eastern Conference Players of the Month. This is an honor that I'm sure both these players have won multiple times, as they're the best players in their respective conferences in some people's opinion. And, we'll start with James Harden. James Harden, like I've said multiple times on this podcast, is one of the best NBA offensive players we've ever seen. Now, I've seen some things recently. People think that James Harden kind of does stat padding. He pads his stats from time to time. I don't believe that. I feel like the offense runs through him, so wouldn't he shoot it, and do that? If he was stat padding, why didn't he stay in the game against the Hawks when he had 60 and try to get to 80? That's stat padding. That's like, hey, coach, don't take me out. Let me get more stats. James Harden just does what he's asked to do. I mean, we know what the team is. We know what he does. And we can't hate on James Harden because he takes advantage of the opportunities when presented to him. You really can't. He does what he does. He does what he's supposed to do. He comes out there, scores almost 40 a game every night. It's kind of hard, really, if you think about an NBA, to have big stat lines like that and not be considered a ball hog or a stat patter, because everybody wants it to be, well, if you really weren't, everybody else would have better numbers. But that's just how Houston plays, and Houston has played through Harden like this for years. So I don't think this should be shocking. Like, it's funny because you would have thought with Russell Westbrook in there that those numbers actually would have decreased, but they've actually increased. So, maybe it could be dangerous because you obviously don't expect Harden to average 40 a game during the playoffs, even though that would be fantastic. Now, would that result in them winning? We don't know, because we got to see what everybody else is doing. But, I think Harden's done pretty well for himself and everything he's done in his career. And I think that, like I said, he's usually disrespected continuously by a lot of people in the league because of the way he plays and because of who he is. And you just definitely cannot sleep on James Harden and sleep on what he's done for the NBA since he's been in the NBA and ever since he became part of the Houston Rockets in general. But congrats to him for winning Western Conference Player of the Month. But now we're going to go to the Eastern Conference Player of the Month. Giannis obviously has had a great month. Giannis, he's actually, if you look at his numbers, he's actually doing better in the same amount of games that he played in at this point last year to this year. He has doubled his 3-point shots from last year. And, from the entire year, I mean, at this point, like, he has doubled it. I think actually, yes, I think he's doubled it last year to this point in the season. So he's shooting more threes. He's done more. He's obviously worked on his game this offseason, became a better player. He's leading Milwaukee to one of the best records in the Eastern Conference again. And, Giannis, like I said, he's one of the most dominant players in the league. He can destroy you in the paint, but if he gets that jump shot at a consistent level, I mean, he's one of those players that you just feel like he's unstoppable. He's literally a freak of nature. And he's a guy who can bring up the point position. He can bring it up from point guard and make plays. And, he's one of those guys that he could potentially be the face of the league after LeBron leaves. I mean, he's one of those candidates. He's one of the many candidates for face of the NBA after LeBron leaves. And, very much deserved. I mean, some people wonder, can you really market this league around someone who's not from the United States? Will people from the United States be able to relate to somebody like Giannis? And I think they will. I think Giannis is a very well-loved player and actually could benefit you because just that out of country love that he'll get could benefit him in terms of marketing, because not only you have a high U.S. fan base, you have a high Greek fan base, maybe from Greece because that's where he's from, and other maybe overseas countries that would love to have Giannis, being the face of the league. And next, we have Darren Collinson. If you remember Darren Collinson, he retired during NBA free agency this past summer, which was surprising to a lot of people. I think he was 30, 31 years old. Still a good point guard, quality point guard. And he had teams offering him deals, like he was destined to get signed. But he surprisingly retired. Now, I believe they said for religious reasons he retired. I believe. And he wanted to focus on other things. Now he's considering making a comeback to the NBA. And teams are already lined up and interested, which you already know. Usually when there's a good quality player, for maybe you can get probably for cheap. Because remember, Darren Collison could have got like 10, 15 million a year. I don't know if he's going to get that now, but that's what he was getting offered in free agency. But now that he's coming back, through after the first quarter of the season, he could get very, very close to a high percentage of numbers. And something, I think the Lakers and Clippers, who both of them want, I think could use him. Obviously, if you don't like Rajon Rondo, for the Lakers, you could just maybe phase him out, put Darren Collison in. Obviously, for the Clippers, they don't really have a true backup point. I mean, Lou Williams is a point guard, but you rather put him as your just scoring guard, or Darren Collison is more of a point. So maybe that way it could be maybe add more flexibility to the lineup. Because it just depends on what you would rather have. Just in case maybe you have Patrick Beverley, since he's out with his wrist injury right now, or some foul trouble, you already got a second point guard who can come in and do the job. So I think that'd be great for them. And I'm pretty sure other teams are going to be trying to get in there and get him also. But coming up next, Simon, we're going to talk about the All-Star voting, what the ballots are looking like. Also, what the Lakers are doing, actually, to go all out to get people to vote for them. And also, we're going to talk about some other news, like Melo coming back to the Garden, and the Cavs thinking they'll find a trade partner for Kevin Love. Stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about some news and notes around the league, like Jimmy Butler separating from the Jordan brand, and also Darren Collison returning to the league and who's interested. So now we're gonna get into some All-Star talk here, and we're gonna talk about the All-Star voting. They released the first fan returns today, and I'm gonna give you 1 through 10 for each conference, and I'm also going to let you know. Overall, Luka and Giannis have the lead in all voting. We're going to start with the Western Conference. Front court. LeBron James leads all votes with over 1 million votes. Second is Anthony Davis. Third is Kawhi Leonard. Fourth is Paul George. And between Kawhi and Paul George, there's a very big gap. There's almost a 500,000 vote gap between those two. Karl Anthony Towns at 5. Nikola Jokic at 6. At 7. Kristaps Porzingis is at 6. Number 8 is Carmelo Anthony, which is big. Carmelo, people love Carmelo, and they just want Carmelo to be successful, so I'm not surprised seeing him in the top 10 here. Number 9, Brandon Ingram. He's had a fantastic year. And then number 10, this might surprise some people, but Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard is 10th in All-Star votes in the Western Conference in the front court. Now, guards. Luka Doncic with over 1 million votes. James Harden is 2. Damian Lillard is 3. Steph Curry, even though he's not even playing. This is how you know that some people question it, because it's a popularity contest. Literally, some people who don't play can still get an All-Star bid, but he's 4th in All-Star voting. Russell Westbrook is 5th. D'Angelo Russell is 6th. Donovan Mitchell is 7th. We have an Alex Caruso sighting at 8. And I'm going to get more than that after this. Alex Caruso is is a loved man. They call him the demi-goat in some communities. That was Caruso. Number 9, Devin Booker. And 10, John Morant, the rookie, coming in at 10 in guards. In the Eastern Conference in the front court, leading all voters in the Eastern Conference, Giannis, the only player in the Eastern Conference also over a million, Giannis. 2, Joel Embiid. 3, Pascal Siakam. 4, Jimmy Butler. 5, Jason Tatum. 6, Taco Falls. Yes, Taco, 6th. This man's barely played, and this man is, again, popularity contest. People love Taco, and he is 6th in All-Star voting. He has over 100,000 votes. He has more votes than, let me tell you the rest, Bam Adebayo, Gordon Hayward, Andre Drummond, and Sabonis. I mean, listen. Obviously, I think you have to be in the top, I want to say maybe top 4, I believe. Top 4 or 5 to make the All-Star team. But if Taco's getting these votes, I mean, you never know. Somebody might see this and they say, oh, Taco got a chance, let's vote for him. Or on the other end, they could say, oh, Dwight Howard has a chance, let's vote for him. Or Alex Caruso has a chance, let's vote for him. You know, it's kind of funny, but it's interesting. In guards in the Eastern Conference, Trae Young leads all guards, which is a great accomplishment for Trae Young. He's balled out this year. Number 2 is Kyrie Irving. Number 3 is Kemba Walker. Number 4 is Derrick Rose. Number 5 is Zach LaVine. Number 6 is Ben Simmons. Number 7 is Jaylen Brown. Number 8, Kyle Lowry. Number 9, Bradley Beal. And number 10, Spencer Dinwiddie. And those are your first fan returns. This is very, very, very interesting. I kind of wonder, you know, if Taco has a chance to make it with votes. Or if Alex Caruso has a chance to make it with votes. It's extremely interesting to me that could potentially be the 2 guys that make it to the All-Star team. I mean, they have to make it in with votes because I don't think the coaches are going to vote him in, but I just think that's extremely interesting that they do that. And it just shows maybe some of the fanfare that Mr. Caruso and Taco Falls gets coming with their return to, you know, just getting more minutes and maybe forcing them on the court more to help with those votes. But we're also going to talk about the Lakers going all out. And we're going to talk about Melo dropping 26 in his return to New York. The Lakers, if you look at some of the advertising they've done, if you look at them, they actually have a graphic where they release currently who would be the starting 5 for both sides of the teams. And they released one where basically Alex Caruso is at every position on the West and Eastern Conference. So, again, they see it, and they're kind of behind it a little bit. They're trying to get Alex Caruso in there. They're trying to see if maybe he can crack the All-Star ballot and potentially make it onto the All-Star team, even though, like I said, in terms of production, you may not see it. But in terms of fanfare, I mean, Caruso clearly has the fanfare that's behind him to get into it, you know, and they're trying. And obviously, Celtics fans for Taco, they're gonna probably go all out to try to vote on him. So again, it's something we gotta keep an eye on. I don't think the official ballot is out till, I believe, maybe in another couple of weeks. But it's gonna be interesting to see what happens when it gets to the All-Star break and who actually gets in there. Also, Carmelo Anthony came back to the Garden last night with his new team, and the Madison Square Garden gave him "We Want Melo" chants. I mean, a lot of people loved Carmelo in New York because, especially with the state of the franchise now for the New York Knicks, I mean, a lot of people are just like, listen, we rather have a GOAT or a guy we feel like that we can get behind like Carmelo here, rather than having what we've had for the past previous years, which is nothing. And I think that's important because obviously he's a guy who, you know, just goes out there every day and does what he needs to do. He's played very well while he's been in Portland. I mean, some people may consider this even a miniature big three with him, Damian Lillard, and CJ McCollum. And, you know, even though the Knicks got the win last night, Melo dropped 26 in his return. So, obviously, he's still doing what he does. He's still playing at a high level. And he's still being what Melo is. I mean, he's been doing the same moves to players for years now. The little back post up, fade away jumper, boom. You know what I'm saying? Just he's been doing that for years, and you can't stop it. That's just his patented move. That's just what Carmelo does. And so, Carmelo, I think, I'm glad that he's getting all-star votes. I'm glad that he's getting recognition for his play, and I'm glad that he's playing well. Because, again, a lot of people felt like that some people tried to keep him out the league, and now he's come back to the league, and he's played at a very, very high level. So, all credit goes to Carmelo Anthony. And lastly, the Cavs believe they can find a trade partner for Kevin Love. I think that, that's going to be an interesting negotiation, because Kevin Love could definitely help out a playoff team. There were rumors he wanted to go to Portland because that's where he's from. And, that wouldn't be a bad move. I think the only thing with Portland, what are you giving up? What did you have to give up? I feel like you're not going to give up Melo, just in my opinion. I just don't feel like it. But at the same time, they both played the same position, which I feel like some people feel like Melo's better at the 4 than the 3. So they kind of played the same position anyway. So you probably wouldn't want to make that trade and have those lineup issues. But at the same time, Kevin Love can help a championship team. I mean, remember, he's a stretch 4. He can stretch the floor, hit the 3, hit the J. If you remember back in his heyday in Minnesota, this man was averaging like 25 points a game. He can rebound. His only weakness is he can be a liability defensively because of, he's just not the greatest lateral mover. So if you got an athletic 4 on him or an athletic guy who has to guard, you can have that mismatch. But Kevin Love can definitely help a championship team. He can help a team get that extra scoring off the bench or as a starter. I mean, you'll have to see what Kevin Love wants to do, but I think the Cavs, they have to understand who Kevin Love is now and understand what they can potentially get for Kevin Love coming up. You don't want to overcharge teams for him because it's Kevin Love. I think a lot of teams are just like, well, bro, bring him in because he'll help us, but we're not going to sell our bank for him. So Cleveland needs to find a trade that I think gives them enough of what they want, but also is good for the other team where they don't feel like we're giving up way too much because, that's always the biggest thing when you're doing trades in the NBA is not giving up too much or having too much happening. But coming up next, we're going to talk about 7 players in the NBA who are rookies or in their second year who have maybe not been as great as we expected, been disappointed, or even slumped. Coming up right here on the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we talked about All-Star voting, All-Star votes, some of the promotion for Alex Caruso that the Lakers are doing. Also, we talked about Carmelo returning to the Garden and Kevin Love potentially reinvigorated on the trade market by the Cavaliers. And now we're going to get into something that I'm getting where I'm going to talk about some of the most disappointing rookies and sophomores of the NBA season. And we're just going to ride right into it. Now, starting first, we're going to start with Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish is a guy, and I'm also getting this off of the Bleacher Report. Jonathan Wasserman, he created this list, and I'm just going to break it down and talk about it because I pretty much agree with this list. These are the 7 biggest disappointments in the league. But I'm going to talk about Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish has had a disappointing year. The same struggles that he basically went through for the most part in college, he's going through right now. I mean, people thought in college maybe, it was because Zion's there and RJ Barrett, and he's just not having his chance to shine. Now he's getting more opportunities with the Hawks, especially with some of the injuries that have happened, and he just has not looked the same. And he has not been good in any catch and shoot situations. He's also kind of struggled defensively a little bit from time to time and just getting his shot. He also played, when I watched him play early this year, he plays a little out of control. He plays a little reckless. It's almost like he's going too fast for himself. And I know the Hawks expected more out of him. A lot of people feel like maybe they should send him to the G League to get his game right, because right now it's just like, with the Hawks having the season they've had, a lot of people are contributing that to the fact that Cam Reddish has not stepped up, where his partner, DeAndre Hunter, he hasn't had this amazing season, but he's been very consistent. He's been good. He's been consistent. He's been what you would kind of expected out of him. But Cam Reddish has been mainly disappointment. And I mean, he's showed some promise, but it's just he has to score more efficiently, and he has to score more. He has to score better. Because the Hawks need it. They need, because if Trey's not scoring, they usually have a hard time scoring, and they need Cam to step up if he wants to continue to get the minutes he gets and play at a high level. Second, Jarrett Culver from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, Timberwolves traded up for him after having, the performance he had this year in the NCAA tournament this past year. He was a breakout guy. He looked like he could be one of the better players coming into this draft. Obviously, the thing about Culver was he's more of a guy who, like a lot of players coming in, jump shot wasn't the best, but was good in transition, was good getting to the paint, and could play some defense. And also, he's long and lengthy. And, Culver has tried to change some of his mechanics up, tried to shoot better, try to do better, but it's not really helped. He's only made 24.3 total of his total jump shots, and 23 of 108 of his three-point shooters, and only 41% from the free throw line. So he's basically been a complete liability for the Minnesota Timberwolves on the perimeter. He has not given the Minnesota Timberwolves much on the perimeter, and I think that's kind of one of the biggest issues here. I mean, they're trying to use him in different ways, but it's just not working. Right now, he's just not starting off good. Now, we have to remember something. Trae Young last year, he didn't have a horrible start, but he had a very average start, very just whatever start, and then the second half of the season really picked up. Maybe that's what might happen here with Jarrett Culver, but right now, he's been very disappointing. And Minnesota definitely wants better play out of a guy they invested high pick in, plus traded up for and gave up assets for. So they're definitely expecting more out of Culver long term. Jerome Robinson of the Los Angeles Clippers. And, remember, the Clippers had a lottery pick next year, and that's who they got in 2018. This wasn't the past year's draft, 2018 draft. This is the sophomore, second year. And you would think, his best attribute coming out of college was scoring. But that hasn't been something that he's really done well. And he hasn't cracked the rotation. Now, this year you may feel like, look at the Clippers, they're stacked. It would be hard for a guy like him to crack it. But he's a guy who can still come in and give you good minutes that you can rely on and be like, we know he can come in and still give us something. And he just hasn't been able to find his rhythm this year. He's been struggling to find the rhythm offensively. And, obviously the Clippers, again, expected more out of him. They want him to. But they might have to trade him. He's probably someone that maybe if the Clippers make a trade, they'll give up. He's someone who's just a good young asset. Maybe you would bring up maybe if you can get him more playing time. Because like I said, you would feel like it would be hard with the roster the Clippers now have assembled with Kawhi and Paul George and all of them, that he can find his little niche within the team, because there's just so much other stuff going on now with the team. Because usually on championship teams, players like this, if you're not making a decent impact from the get-go, you're not playing. And then you'll be great trade bait for if they ever need to make a trade for a particular player. Number 4, and someone who actually showed some promise last year from the New York Knicks, Kevin Knox. Kevin Knox, he's really dropped off. He showed some promise last regular season, played well in some games. A lot of people look forward to him playing with RJ Barrett this year, and obviously him and Mitch Robinson from the last class. And he just hasn't. Really, he's struggling to find minutes. Really, right now, he's not even a starter. He's more of a role player. And it's been sad, last year he averaged 28.8 points a game. Now he's averaging 20.1. That's an 8-minute drop off. That's almost a whole quarter worth of minutes. And his average is below 10 in terms of scoring. So clearly, this isn't this isn't what the Knicks were expecting out of him. And, Kevin Knox just has to do better. He has an offensive inefficiency and lack of defensive awareness. And, the Knicks are a team with the status they're in. They can't afford to draft guys like Knox and not work. They have to start hitting on their draft picks if they want to become better. Because obviously, we all know the Knicks fans are very, very much impatient with this team already. So you don't want to make it worse and then have one of your lottery picks who show potential not be what you thought and end up being a bust. Because now it's just like, oh, here we go again if you're a Knicks fan. And trust me, I know Knicks fans out there, y'all don't want to go through this again. Y'all don't. Y'all want, it's almost like we can't sign nobody and we can't draft nobody. Like why is it that we always draft the wrong people, but everybody else drafts the right people? It's always kind of weird for the Knicks because you're just like, is it the pressure of New York? Like, what is it? But yeah, Kevin Knox has been a disappointment in his second year. Fifth on this list is Mo Bamba. Now, Bamba, we knew what you were getting yourself into. He's probably a solid defender, block shots, all that good stuff. A very big, powerful guy underneath the paint. Even with Nikola Vucevic on the roster, he still was able to get playing time. But Mamba's only averaged 8 points a game. And that's not what you want from one of your top picks, one of your top lottery picks. He's only getting 18 minutes a game, too. And, I mean, from basic, I've watched some of Orlando's games. I don't know if the confidence is there in Mo Bamba. And, you would think with his physical measurements, he should have all of the things capable that is needed to produce at this level, but he's not. He's struggling in all aspects of the game. And, even though he's known for his shot blocking, that hasn't even been the best. So Mo Bamba definitely needs to get back on track, or else Orlando's going to have to move off of him in his second year. Next is Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But the reason why this is more of a disappointment was because of how he played in the summer league. He had a big summer league. He averaged 24 points in the summer league. And the preseason. He played very well. But in the NBA games, he really hasn't played that well. He struggled to show explosion and strength. He struggled to shoot. He struggled to get out of pick and rolls. And it's right now he's just not looking good. With somebody who lacks strength and explosion, he has to make it up with crafting and fundamentals and technique. And he's not showing that either. And so right now it's not looking fantastic for, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, because you expected more out of him. You expected more out of him with the young talent they were bringing in with Zion. Which, on the next list, number 7 is Zion. But they consider this more just missing time in terms of Zion, Marvin Bagley, DeAndre Ayton, Grayson Allen, and Chandler Hutchinson. All these guys have missed time this year in their second years. Obviously, Ayton coming off the suspension. Bagley missed 25 games, already this year. And, Zion hasn't even played a single game yet. With Grayson Allen, he was playing pretty decent, but he hasn't even been able to stay on the floor. And Hutchinson's been hurt with a shoulder injury. So, all these guys, they still have a chance. Now, this isn't death wish that you're not doing great in your first 2 years, but you definitely want to start picking it up. You definitely want to start improving your game, because you do not want to be labeled a bust if you were a high draft pick or not be able to deliver on expectations that people were expecting you to deliver on coming up. But coming up next, we're going to talk about college basketball, big games this weekend, and since conference play is starting, stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. And now we're going to get into some college basketball. Last segment we talked about the most disappointing and slumping rookies and sophomores this year in the NBA from a list compiled by Bleacher Report. And I gave my opinions on all 7 players and what I thought, what's going on with them, and just, why they're struggling. But like I said, we're going to go switch into some college basketball here. A lot of conferences are playing each other this week. A lot of big games are now happening this week. There's going to be more of a variety of big games in college basketball. So we have a lot to go through today. A lot of games that you definitely should try to tune into if you have a chance to, if you're a fan of college basketball, because we have some big ones. The first one is Georgia and Memphis. Georgia, obviously, with Anthony Edwards, potentially a number 1 overall draft pick in this year's NBA draft, going against Memphis, who had James Wiseman, but obviously dropped out of school because of NCAA rules. But Memphis is still one of the best teams in the nation. They're 9th right now, 12-1. It's a 9-3 Georgia Bulldogs team. It's going to be 1 o'clock on CBS. If I had to predict who's going to win this game, I'm going to go with Memphis here, even though this would be a very big upset for Georgia to have that big quality win on their resume and making their push to the NCAA tournament that's going to be coming up in March. But Memphis looks like a very complete team, and they look like one of the best teams. And, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. It's funny because Edwards doesn't even lead his own team in scoring. It's Hammonds. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this game. I'm going to go with Memphis, though, to pick up the victory. Next big game, Creighton and Butler. Creighton is 12-2 versus a 13-1 Butler team. This is going to be on Fox Sports 1 at 12 o'clock. Another big game. Butler is one of the best teams in the nation. They're also top 10 in net rankings. So right now, compiled from that metric, they've had one of the best seasons so far in terms of their resume. They're going against a very tough Creighton team. Creighton's one of the best teams of the mid-majors, man. They're going to come out there, going to Butler, trying to pick up a W, trying to beat this team and try to get an upset against the Butler Bulldogs, which, Creighton, with this record, they beat Butler, helps improve their resume. They might crack the top 25 and make it to the NCAA tournament in March. Next big game, Maryland, Indiana. This will be on Fox. 12 o'clock game 2. Maryland's 11-2. Indiana's 12-2. Indiana looking again as a resume booster. A lot of these games, really, if you think about it, could be resume boosters for a lot of these teams. Because every game, especially at this point in the season, is a resume booster. And if you're a team like Indiana, you want to win these types of games so you have the ability to basically say we have that quality win against a quality opponent and then however that team finishes that season, you can say we were able to beat one of the better teams that are in the league and we deserve to be into that tournament, especially if they may end up being on the bubble or anything like that, and also can help improve the net rankings and their net ranking standing when they get to that point in the season. But if I had to make a prediction here, I'm going to go with Maryland here to pick up the W, but I would not be surprised at an upset if an upset did occur here. Next big game is Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. Now both teams are 9-3. Texas Tech is 12th in the nation though. It's going to be on ESPN2 at 12 o'clock. Another big game, another resume building game. Texas Tech may have not had the greatest season they wanted up to this point, even though they're still ranked 12th. Lost a couple of games they maybe feel like they shouldn't have, but they did upset the number 1 team in the nation at the time, Louisville. So they've had that quality big win, and they're looking for just more quality big wins. Obviously, as you know, the Big 12 is a very good basketball conference, so this is not going to be an easy walk in the park for Oklahoma State. They got to make sure they come out there and beat one of the best teams in their conference so they can have that pull. Because obviously you have to think about conference, you're playing for a conference championship. You're playing to win your division. So it's going to be important for them to come out with a victory in either side, but I will go with Texas Tech in this game. Big matchup between number 12 Florida State, number 7 Louisville, both in the ACC, 2 o'clock on ESPN2. Louisville coming off a loss, they're trying to bounce back. They want to bounce back for the loss against Kentucky. Florida State looking like one of the best teams in the ACC this year. Big game for both of these teams to just have get a leg up on the competition, to start off conference play at a good level and just be able to win. So I think it's important that whatever happens. I think that both teams are going to be playing out here to the hardest of their content, just so they can win this game and end up winning the ACC at the end of the day, because that's the goal. That's usually the goal at the end of the day, is to win the ACC division. And then also when that tournament comes, the ACC tournament, don't be surprised these teams meet for a third time. Another big matchup is Iowa and Penn State. Now, Iowa and Penn State both ranked 10-3, 11-2. Both teams are coming out there playing at a higher level. Both teams are going to try to do what they can. Both teams are going to try to win. And don't be surprised if they come out here in this game and it's just a defensive matchup, because both teams are some of the best teams defensively. And, obviously Iowa has Garza, one of the best scorers in the nation, going against a very up-and-coming Penn State team. Both teams are coming into this game winning 4 straight. So, obviously, both of these teams are feeling pretty good about themselves right now. They're playing at a very high level, and hopefully we'll see what happens there. Missouri and Kentucky. I mean, this is probably one of the easier games for Kentucky this year in terms of just... They've had a very long string of playing very quality opponents. Missouri's still a quality opponent, but not as quality as maybe like the Louisville game. So, I expect Kentucky to take care of business in this game. Louisville and Marquette. Marquette's always one of those the pesky mid-major schools. Always have the talent to compete with big major schools. And within the conference, Louisville is obviously, not Louisville, but Villanova is the team that, everybody wants to beat. Everybody wants to show in the Big East that they're better than them. And they're going to do anything they can. This will be a big statement if Marquette can pick up the win and beat the Villanova. But I'm going to go with Villanova in this game, though. I do think Villanova is going to pick up the victory in this game and continue their winning streak. We got Virginia and Virginia Tech. Both teams coming in here. Virginia Tech's on a hot 4-game winning streak right now. Virginia just bounced back from their second loss of the season. So both teams right now, obviously this is a rivalry game, you could say, because there's 2 teams from Virginia playing against each other. It's going to be at Virginia, though, so you can catch this on the ACC network. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm going to go with Virginia in this game. I think Virginia's going to win this game. Another big matchup is West Virginia and Kansas. Obviously, West Virginia impressed Virginia. Just came off upsetting Ohio State. Now they're playing Kansas. This is going to be a big matchup. Kansas obviously saw they can beat one of the best teams in the nation. They can beat us, so they need to be on their game in this game. There's going to be at Kansas at the Allen Fieldhouse, so Kansas has all the momentum in the world to come in here and win. West Virginia is riding a 4-game winning streak while Kansas has just bounced back from their first loss of the year. This is going to be probably one of the best games that you can watch potentially on TV this weekend. Kansas has a lot of talent. West Virginia has a lot of talent. Both head coaches are coaching at a high level too, and it's going to come down to who can make the most stops and who can make the most threes, in my opinion, in this game, because both teams are tops in three-point shooting in the nation. The only difference is that Kansas also has a low post presence, and I think in Mbukwe, so you gotta watch out for that. And then you got good old Texas and Baylor. Baylor, obviously a top 10 team, going against a Texas team who's trying to make some relevance this year, trying to crack into the poll too. A lot of these games, obviously, teams win. You can crack into the poll. You can crack into the top 25, make some things happen. So that's going to be very important and very interesting to see what happens in this game. I think I'm going to go with upset here, Texas. I think Texas is going to pick up the upset at Baylor. I just think that this, every week in these types of games, you're going to have an upset, and especially the way college basketball has gone this year. There's always an upset every week, especially with a top 5 team. And Baylor's 6, but I mean, they're still a top team, so I would not be surprised if an upset happens here. And then San Diego State continues to try to be undefeated, 14-0, going against the Utah State Aggies, who are 12-3 on the season. So that's going to be a big game there in that conference, and just trying to see if San Diego State can still be for real, like some people didn't think they were. And then the last big game of the weekend is Michigan State on CBS 1:30 Sunday. Obviously, this is a battle of Michigan, and they're going to be out here competing. Both teams need this win. Izzo, Juwan Howard, rivalry. These games are usually always good every year. It's like Louisville, Kentucky. They're always good every year. Michigan State, always good every year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this game. I definitely look forward to this game, and this probably since it's one of the lone games on Sunday, I'll definitely keep an eye on it while I'm watching the NFL playoffs. But I'll definitely keep an eye on this game. But coming up next segment, we're going to talk about my bold predictions for the NBA season in 2020. Stay right here and stay tuned on the podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we talked about college basketball, big games coming up, some of the games that I'm looking out for this weekend in college basketball. But now we're going to get back to some NBA talk. I'm going to talk about my 2020 bowl predictions. Now, this isn't just for the regular season. This is for the offseason. This is for the beginning of next season, too. These are some bold predictions that I think that potentially could happen. I'm going to say them here today, and maybe you can agree with me. Some you may think is crazy, and some you might agree with. We'll have to see. My first bold prediction is that neither one of the LA teams will not make the Western Conference Finals. I think a team will beat them, or since the Clippers don't care too much about seeding, and the Lakers stay the number one seed, if the Clippers land 4 or 5, they'll play the Clippers in the second round. They'll play the Lakers in the second round, which would then cause, obviously, a semifinals matchup instead of a Western Conference Finals matchup. But I also feel like there may be a team that could upset one of them. Maybe Houston is probably the most likely that could upset one of the LA teams. And I think that they're going to keep them from making the Western Conference Finals. I know a lot of people are expecting that to happen. A lot of people are wanting that to happen. I'm sure it would be great for the league. But I really think that that's something, in my opinion, that I think is going to happen. That's one of my first bold predictions of the 2020 season and further on. My next bold prediction is that the Golden State Warriors will form another super team. Now, I don't know if it's going to be with Giannis. It could be with Karl-Anthony Towns, because Golden State is monitoring that situation. But Golden State clearly knows, listen, with the way the league is, if we want to be on top of it, we need to get us another super team together. And I think that they're definitely trying very hard to get another star player in there. Now, I do feel like that probably means that's the end of Draymond Green. But I think that's what they're aiming for. They're aiming to get another star in there to basically come back with Clay and to come back with Steph. Potentially, they could make a trade for a star, because if they do get a top 3 lottery pick, definitely do not be surprised if they try to make a trade with that pick. Honestly, they could have just picked up an amazing asset for them, because they could use that as trade bait, and that's good trade bait. You know, maybe a team star is disgruntled. Maybe, you never know. I mean, this isn't somebody you would think about, but like if the Suns have another bad year, we'll give you our top pick and another guy, and we want Devin Booker. Now, obviously, you don't know how that would work. I mean, you know, they're kind of doing it right now with D'Angelo Russell, even though we feel like Devin Booker may be a better player than D'Angelo Russell. But that's definitely a prediction that I think could potentially happen. I think that the Golden State Warriors will form another super team. But it's not going to be as top heavy in terms of Kevin Durant, who's like the second best player in the league. That's why I think if they got Giannis, it would be stacked, because if Steph and Clay can play like they play, and then they can maybe put a better supporting cast around, then you could say, okay, yeah, this team's going to be very tough to beat. Even the Lakers teams have a team they may be looking up to, but it will have to see. Because if they get Karl-Anthony Towns is a great player, but we don't view him as we view when Kevin Durant was there, which means even though it'll just be a very top-heavy Western Conference. But that's also one of my pro predictions. one of my other pro predictions are, I think that revenue from the CBA will increase, which will lead to more players undeserving of big major contracts getting big major contracts. I'm not going to say any names, but it's like, okay, well, I'll say this because I don't know if he's going to get it, but there are people who are sometimes wonder. Now, Draymond Green's supposed to be a free agent this offseason. Draymond Green, we know he's not a guy who's going to score a lot of points for you, but he can do a lot of things. He's a great gadget player, I would say. But some people wonder, would somebody pay Draymond Green the max? Would they give Draymond Green that max deal? That is something they definitely wonder about. And a lot of people would question, like, why would you give Draymond Green a max? If there's more money to be spent, Draymond Green could potentially ask for a max. And if you like Draymond Green a month, you might give him close to it. I mean, we already have players now who try to sign that first max deal, then take a shorter deal, just to then end up getting that 10-year super max deal. But, it's one of those things where I think that this will lead to more players being signed, overpaid. And, I mean, you obviously can see that even with more cap room, it can lead to teams being in very weird financial situations with cap. If your team's not performing up to expectation, and then you've played a lot of guys a lot of money who may have never actually deserved that money in the first place. So I think that that's going to be something that's going to be interesting. Another pro prediction I have is I think that James Harden will make it to the NBA Finals this year. I know that's pretty big because that basically means you're saying he's going to beat one or both LA teams. I think James Harden, this would be the best year for him to do it, I think, right now. I feel like this is his best year to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and make that bold prediction that James Harden's going to make it to the NBA Finals. The Houston Rockets are going to make it to the NBA Finals. This may be shocking to you, but that's just how I feel. I feel like that James Harden could potentially do it. I feel like if he was able to average at least 30 in the playoffs and Russell could give him about 20, 23, that's 53 between you two players. And they have some good supporting cast. We can't forget about PJ Tucker. Can't forget about Eric Gordon, Clint Capella. You definitely feel like they have all the potential in the world to potentially be a top team. And so I would not be surprised if they end up being the top team that they think they can be and making it to the NBA Finals this year and basically just creating just such a great moment for the city of Houston. Also, another bold prediction. I think Zion, if he comes back as soon as they say he could come back, will still win Rookie of the Year. I think Zion has all the talent to be a star. If Zion comes back and balls out and averages 20 points a game and gives you a lot of highlight plays, I think he will be able to squeeze out winning Rookie of the Year only playing half of the year. Again, that's a pretty bold prediction, but if anybody can do it, Zion can. All it takes is, because remember, even though Luka won by a lot last year, Trae Young had that exciting second half, which made it interesting. And we don't feel like John Morant is doing what Luka Doncic did last year, so it's not as far-fetched. It's not like, oh, it's completely impossible. Where Luka played so well, and then Trae Young played well, and then, but he still played well. It's like John Morant is playing maybe the best right now, but he's not playing at that Luka level from last year. So if Zion can have maybe a Trae Young-like surge in the second half of the season, I think he'll go ahead and win the Rookie of the Year. But it all depends on when he gets back. Because I do feel like if he didn't get back till maybe like mid-February, that he wouldn't. Because I just feel like it's only 2 months left in the season at that point. He has to probably get back to me within the next 2 weeks and then just start going on a tear from game one. Because Zion just did complete his full practice recently, so he's clearly about to get there. Obviously, you've seen him take jumpers. You've seen him dunk. So I definitely think Zion can win the Rookie of the Year if he gets back in time. And my last bold prediction is that the Atlanta Hawks will add a star player this offseason. I don't know who, but I feel like they're going to add somebody. I feel like with some of the issues they've had, I feel like they're going to add a star. Because I feel like you need to, especially to make Trae want to stay there. Because if Trae's having some rumblings that he might not want to stay, that may be something that you may want to do if you're a Hawks front office. You need to add some talent in there. You have some good young talent, but you know how it is in this league. If you want to win, you're going to have to give up that good young talent for a solidified star. Obviously, I feel like Trey's untouchable, but maybe a Kevin Huerter, maybe a DeAndre Hunter, maybe a Cam Reddish, maybe if push comes to shove, a John Collins. And I think they're going to make a trade for a proven star in this league, and we'll have to see, whoever that star is, how far the Atlanta Hawks may potentially get because of it. But that's it for me. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Football Basketball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. If you would please remember to subscribe to us, that really helps us, and also write a review. And then also follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.